those who are here with us. It's so wonderful to have you all with us here. Shalom to you all. This is Rabbi Yehudah Glick from the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. We are talking today on the 14th of March 2021, which is also the first of the month of Nisan. Today was the first of the month of Nisan, the first month of the biblical calendar. As we read in the Torah in Exodus 12, the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall be to you the head of the month. To you it shall be the first of the month of the year. Speak to the entire community of Israel. On the 10th of this month, let each one take a lamb for each parental home, a lamb for each household." I hope you people can hear me. If those of you who are here with me, just tell me that you can hear me. It'll be very helpful. Just say shalom. And as I said, on the first of the month of the first biblical month, God says to Moses, "Tell the people that we are coming close to the time of the Exodus. We're coming close to the time of the deliverance from the slavery of Egypt." And he tells them the 10th month, every single one is to take a lamb. And every lamb is to have a whole family around it. And the lamb is supposed to be 1 year old. Set tamim zachar ben shana. You shall have a perfect male lamb in its first year. A perfect lamb in its first year. And you shall keep it for inspection until the 14th day of the month. And the entire congregation of the community of Israel shall offer it in the afternoon. And they shall take the blood and put it on the two doorposts of the lintel, on the houses in which they eat it. And they shall, on this night, they shall eat the meat roasted over the fire, with unleavened bread, with bitter herbs, and they shall eat it together. And you shall not eat it raw or boiled in water, except roasted over the fire, head with legs. It should be complete. It should be complete. You shall not leave it over until the next morning. Whatever is left over to the next morning, you shall burn alive. And this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is Passover sacrifice to the Lord. And I will pass through the land of Egypt. And I will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And upon all the gods of Egypt, I will wreak judgment. I, the Lord. And the blood will be for your sign upon the houses where you will be. And I will see the blood and skip over you. And there will be no plague to destroy you when I smite the people of the land of Egypt. So they're to mark the doorposts of every single house with the blood of the lamb. And this way, God will know. Shalom to Maranta from South Africa. This way, God will know that this is a house where there's a Jewish firstborn. And of course, the question that raises right away is, why does God need the blood on the doorposts to know which one of these families is a Jewish family? He can look on the mailboxes. He can check in the local phone book. Why does he need the blood on the doorposts to know which family is the family of a Jewish family? But this is only a very first question. And I think it's a very basic question. Because the major question is, of all the great things that happened in Egypt, 10 plagues, blood and frogs and lice. And we had hail with fire together. And we had darkness. All of these great miracles that happened that we celebrate to commemorate them on the Passover holiday. And then the dividing of the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds. Why, of all the great miracles that happened Is this holiday called Passover because of that miracle that God skipped over the houses and was able to identify which house is a Jewish house and which house is not a Jewish house? I mean, let's call it the holiday of independence. Let's call it the holiday of redemption. Let's call it the holiday of freedom. Let's call it the holiday of deliverance from slavery. Why, of all the great miracles that happened in Egypt, did God choose this passing over the doorposts as the name of the holiday, as the name of the celebration, as the name of the offering? And we have to understand that this whole story of this final plague, the plague of the firstborn, was already prepared from the very beginning. I want to remind you, in Exodus 4, when God tells Moses to go to Egypt, he tells him, and I'm reading in Exodus 4, verse 22, "And you shall say to Pharaoh, so said the Lord, my firstborn son is Israel. So I say to you, my son, send out my son, so he will worship me. But if you refuse to send him out, behold, I am going to slay your firstborn son." So what we see, that already before all the plagues, God had told Moses to warn Pharaoh that he will kill his firstborn son if God does not, if Pharaoh does not release God's firstborn son. So the question is, since when was Israel referred to as a firstborn son? And what is the significance of God calling Israel the firstborn son? And I think that there's a beautiful theory, which I heard from a rabbi from New York, Rabbi David Foreman. This peculiar Bechor status, the status of being a firstborn, that's mentioned before the plagues, which we saw before. Before the plagues even began, God says that they are my firstborn. Maybe it was not something that was pre-existing. Shalom Manika. It was not something pre-existing, but it was a hope for Israel's destiny. Maybe in the end, it will be something that Israel will earn. When? At the climax, at the culminating moment of the Exodus, at the other moment God had spoke about when he spoke of Israel this way. God said, Israel is my firstborn, and if you fail to set him free, I'll strike your firstborn. Maybe it was the moment that all firstborn were threatened, the 10th plague, that God took possession of Israel as his firstborn. And what does it mean? What God was really telling Pharaoh, there would come a time when God will kill all the firstborn of Egypt, except his own. If you made the choice that night to become God's firstborn, the firstborn of the transcendent parent, you would survive. But if you were the firstborn only of an earthly parent, then you would perish. If Israel would receive the designation that night they were set free, it would seem that they achieved it through the offering of the Passover. The Passover offering. Somehow, the offering was transformative. After all, God didn't need the blood, as we said. He didn't need the blood of the doorposts to distinguish Egyptian houses from Israelite ones. God wasn't in need of a good GPS system. The offering of the Passover offering actually did something. It transformed the people from a band of slaves. It transformed the people from a band of slaves to an independent nation committed to God in a certain special way. A way that could be best described through the designation of firstborn, Bechor. What exactly are we to make of this designation? What does it mean to be God's firstborn? And how would the Passover offering be a key to effecting this transformation? And the answer is the concept of what the Passover is all about. The Passover. God can take people out of Egypt. He can free the people. But eventually, for a person to become a free person, you can't coerce it. You can't force a person to be a free man. The only way a person can be a free man is if he makes a decision to be a free man. The evening of the Passover offering, the miraculous events of the Exodus as a whole, were designed to achieve the purposes of getting Pharaoh to recognize God, but getting the people of Israel to understand what it means to be free. When they take, on the 10th day of the month, the sheep or the goat, and they set it aside for the worship of one God, a whole offering, they don't break the bones, they don't cook it and put it in a pot, they roast it whole. And they eat it together. And they put the blood on the doorposts announcing this is a house of a person who is a servant only of God. And the declaration of the people that we are becoming part of God's family. We are the firstborn. What does it mean to be the firstborn? And this is a very interesting point that Rabbi Foreman likes to point out. He says that there's always a generation gap between parent and children. That's the way it is. That's the way life is. But there's one of the children who's closest, in a way, to serve as a bridge between the parents and the generation of the children. And that is the firstborn. The firstborn has a mission to serve as somebody who can transform the tradition, transform the heritage of the parent to the other children. When God says that the people of Israel are their firstborn, it means that all the nations are part of God's family. Hashem, the one God, one world, one God, all humanity is his family. But he has designated the people of Israel for the destiny of serving as their firstborn. When God passes over the doorposts, it means that the people of Israel chose to serve at this mission. Because we saw throughout the book of Genesis, though this is the mission of the firstborn, but it doesn't always have to remain the firstborn. It can be somebody else in the family. Somebody who takes upon himself to serve as this person who serves as the person transferring the heritage of the parents to the children. And this is what happened. On that night, the children of Israel, putting the blood on the doorpost, announced, we are servants only to Hashem. We are ready to serve Hashem. We are ready to serve Hashem as his firstborn. And therefore, all the miracles that God did, the tearing of the sea, the plagues, would not be able to serve a purpose if the people of Israel would not have done the offering of the Passover. Shalom, shalom, Cindy from snowy Colorado. Wow, so wonderful. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, diverse fishermen. Shalom, Di Jumbo. Shalom, Monica. Shalom, Maranta from South Africa. So, what I'm trying to say, excuse me. What I'm trying to say, I think this is the concept of the holiday of Passover. The reason the name becomes Passover was because not all the miracles that God did, but the miracle of the fact that the people of Israel, who were enslaved for so many years, were able to get up and say, here we are ready to serve Hashem, ready to be free people, ready to worship God, and to serve as his firstborn, to serve as his messenger upon all the nations of the world, the family of the nations. What then is the best name for this holiday that celebrates the events of Exodus? We have seen that. For God, the Exodus revealed his identity as creator. But for Israel, it was up to them to respond to God's revelation as creator. They did so by committing to serve to the heavenly parent as the first son. Shalom. Shalom. Yeah, we should have blown the shofar in honor of Rosh Chodesh. You're right, Mr. Fisherman. So it's only fitting, as I said, that Israel would mark the deliverance of the Exodus with ceremonies involving the firstborn. And it's only fitting that the discussion of these ceremonies would make it into the basics of the foundation of our holidays. And the very first holiday on the Jewish calendar is Passover, which announces the fact that we are his firstborn. We accept it upon ourselves, first of all, that we are free people. Second of all, that we want to serve Hashem. And third of all, that we want to be his firstborn upon all the nations. Yes, we can speak offline sometime. You're welcome to contact me. Keep in touch. And all of you, welcome to send us to correspond through shalomjerusalem.org. You can partner with us because we really are wanting to bring about this destiny of serving as God's firstborn upon all the nations. If there's a firstborn, there are many other children. And all humankind are God's family. And what we see, that right over here at this point, at that very evening, which we're going to be celebrating, yes, Monica, you need to come to Israel. Yes, you're in my prayers. You're in my prayers. So as I said, this evening of holiday of Passover, which we will be celebrating in another 2 weeks, on the 14th day of the month of Nisan, which is Friday in exactly 2 weeks from now. This year, I think it's the 27th of March. Friday night, actually, we'll be celebrating it Saturday night. We're celebrating that we are free people. What does it mean to be a free person? To take upon ourselves, to be God's firstborn, and to serve as his firstborn to all the nations. So I want to wish you all that we should all together be able to worship Hashem, the one and only God, one world. We're going to continue with these messages. And thank you all for partnering with us at shalomjerusalem.org. I love you all from Jerusalem, sending your blessings of the temple, blessings of Hashem's presence in this world, blessings from the nation who was the firstborn of Hashem to all the families of the earth. Serve as a source of blessing. And I'm really waiting to see you all here with us in Jerusalem. I love you all. Shalom from Jerusalem.